Okay, welcome everyone to my next spray paint video. It's been a while, but today I'm going to do one that I've been asked to do a couple of times. Follow up to my how to spray paint planets video. Today we're going to do how to spray paint mountains. I'll show you 3 different ways of doing it. First one will be using a stencil. Just cut a stencil in the shape of some small mountains. Randomly cut to whatever shape you want. And we're going to use that in layers. Second one, I'm going to do it freehand with a paintbrush, and then put some texture on it using some scrap bits of paper. And the third way, we're going to do it using some crumpled up paper, and we're going to pull the paper down and make some textures that way. So I'm going to put the mask on now, so I'll go to voiceover for the rest of this. Enjoy!
Okay, so I lied at the start of this video. It's not going to be 3 different ways of painting mountains, it's going to be 4. As I was doing this, I realised there was a nice simple way I could show you extra at the end, so stay tuned to the end of the video to see the 4th way of doing this. So this first way is probably the easiest way. We're just cut some simple mountain shapes out of another piece of card or paper to make a stencil, and I'm going to do a couple of these so that we can layer it, and we're going to start this first layer just spraying black straight over the stencil, and we'll lift it off. Okay, let's remove that stencil, and there we go, nice little mountain range. Probably mostly used for a background. Now of course, you normally would have some sky or a planet or something sitting behind this to make it look a bit more, you know, realistic, like an actual finished painting. But for this tutorial, I'm just going to show you the mountain ranges. Use your imagination to what you'd put behind it. Now for the next one, you wouldn't just use that same stencil and move it down, because it's just going to look exactly the same. So for all it takes, I'm just going to cut another wee stencil, which just different ranges, just completely random, and we'll use that to move it down. Then for the third one, you can of course use your original stencil and flip it vertically so that it's looking the opposite way around than it is at the start, and that'll work as well. But for all it takes to cut a new one, let's do that. Spray this layer in red. You can of course still use black if you missed out the first layer in white. It will look further away in the distance, you can use black again, but so this stands out for this tutorial, I'll do bright red, that way you can see the difference. And this is really easy to do. Remove that one. There we are, see? 2 layers. Doesn't have to be perfect for this example, but the more of these layers you do, the more depth you'll get in your painting. And this kind of stuff, it's just simple, straight colour. There's no texture or anything on it, so it's a different style of painting. It's not going to look 100% realistic, but that's not the look you're going for with this type of stencil. For the third layer, I'm going to use the original stencil again and move it down. This is okay because you've got a layer of stencil in between. And I'm just going to use dark blue and just spray it on, same as I did the first 2 layers. There we go, nice and easy. I'm holding it down with my palette knife there just in case the edges lift and you're going to get underspray under the stencil. Sometimes the weights, if it's smaller areas like that, the palette knife's better than using more weights because it will get you right into the edges. So let's remove that and see how it looks. There we go. So you get the idea. You could use that and put some trees in the foreground, put some planets in the background, put a lake. And now we're going to move on to number 2, the second way of doing it. And we put it up here. And this way is more realistic than the first way. You've seen me using this way before, so we're just going to spray some black onto a bit of card. We're going to grab a small brush, and we're going to paint the outline of how we want our mountains to look. So with this one, we're just going to paint in a black line going round completely at random and how we want our mountain shape to look. And as the first one, normally you'd be doing the background first, the sky or the planets or whatever. We're just going to paint this on so you can see how to do the mountains quickly. So with this one, if you don't like the shape, it's easy enough, just fix it. You can make it look whatever way you want. You're not stuck to the shape that the stencil's got in the first example. And then I'm just going to quickly paint in a little bit, not the whole thing, but just paint in round the edges so that when we spray in the rest of it, we don't get overspray and go into the background. Speed it up, go, 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 go. Wish I could actually paint that fast. Imagine how many paintings you could do in a day. And then we're just going to spray in the body of the mountains, just using the black. And even that, you know, that looks pretty similar to the first one in terms of colour and texture and whatnot. But the difference with this one is we're going to add some texture to it using some white paint and some dark blue paint. And this is kind of, if you've ever seen Bob Ross painting mountains, kind of similar to the way he did it. So we're going to take some paper here and we're going to tear a little rectangle of paper. And you have to bear in mind the size of the mountains you've just painted to the size of the paper you're about to tear. If it's too big or small, it'll just look ridiculous, so you have to kind of do it. There you go. So I've painted it in torn it in a size that's appropriate to the mountains that I've just painted. And the edge that you're going to use, you don't want to use a complete straight edge. So if you cut it with scissors, it's not going to work. You have to tear it with your hand so you get a kind of rougher edge. And you'll see why in a minute. So I'm spraying on some white, waft away the fumes. And then I'm looking at the paper thinking, what edge will I use here? Because both are torn, and we'll go with this one. You just dab in the tip of the paper and lightly press it down onto the edge of the mountain and drag it down, and this will create the effect of the kind of snow and the light hitting the mountains on the right hand side. And you can make whatever shapes you want so that the edge of the mountain becomes clear. See that? And as the paint kind of dries from the bit of paper, it will get less as you go down, so it's as if it's the snow's kind of dispersing, or the light's dispersing as it goes down the mountain. And you can see that I've just went over the back, the peak at the back there, so it adds depth to it at the same time. And with this is really good because you're basically doing it freehand. You can do whatever shapes you want, but don't lean too thickly, else you're just going to get a big white splodge. You have to lean quite lightly, and the paper will just drag along and create the texture as you're going. Okay, so you see how that works? That looks pretty good the way it is. But I like to add in some contrast and colour on the kind of dark sides of the mountain, because if you don't, it just looks like plain black. So I usually use like a dark blue or a grey or something like that, and take another piece of paper, same idea as before, tear the edge, and then this time you're not filling it out completely as you would with the white, you're just adding some kind of highlights to that side. What was it Bob Ross said, without dark there's no light. So the dark part, that you don't want to kill it completely, you don't want to overshadow it completely with the blue, you just want to add a few little highlights as if the kind of light's hitting parts of the mountain on the opposite side. Maybe doesn't show up quite so well on camera here, but when you see it on an actual painting it makes a big difference. And then the blue just contrasts it a little bit, just tiny wee bits, just wee scrapes, not as much as the white, and there we go. Probably one of my favourite ways to do it, to be honest. And you can add some mist at the bottom, and then you're ready for your next layer, which could be trees, or even more mountains, or forests, or anything like that, or a lake. But that to me looks pretty good. I like doing it that way. That's the way I normally do it in my paintings. So the third way of doing this now, the bottom right hand corner, is a completely different way than the first two, and it's using some scrunched up paper. So we're just going to spray a background colour completely all the way down on this section of paper here, and you'll see what we do to get the mountain texture. I've used this way in a couple of my paintings. You can see them on other videos. I'll link them up in the cards, but this is one of the quickest ways of doing it, much faster than the way we've just done, if you've got a large area to paint and you want to do large mountains. So I'm just putting in some light oranges, some dark oranges, a couple of yellows, and then what we'll do is we'll spray some black over the top, not completely saturating it, just kind of lightly missing the black. What am I doing here? I'm looking for the black, can't find it. There it is. and we're just going to spray some rough shapes of mountains. Doesn't have to be exact, don't have to spray paint it in the way we did the first two. It doesn't have to be an exact line, and you'll see why in a minute. We're just doing it this way so that when it gives it some texture. Right, I'm just going to mist on some white, and I've done it in a kind of outline because this is what's going to separate the mountains from whatever you've sprayed in the background. So I've just sprayed an orange colour and some yellow. You might have planets there, you might have other mountains, you might have trees. So the white layer is there to add text. Oh, for goodness sake, there's my phone going. Sorry. So the white layer is just there to add some texture to it as well, but also to give it an outline. So now, take a piece of paper, magazine paper, glossy works best, give it a sharp edge, and what you're going to do is put your hand over the edge and put the paper onto the wet paint and scrape it down like that. There we go, see? And that edge gives the mountain that peak that you see, and the white mist that we've created, you don't want to completely cover that with the white paper. You want to leave a little bit so that it leaves a white layer of mist to separate the mountains from the background image. And my head's in the way, sorry about that. It's been a while since I've done a video, I've forgotten what the etiquette is. And we can then use more paper and create whatever texture you want, and as you drag it down and slide it down, you're going to get those kind of mountain trails and peaks and troughs and textures that you see there. This is one of my favourite ways of doing it because it gives it so much detail and depth. And if you're doing this, it looks pretty realistic, or it's good for space paintings or something that you're doing. You'll see some images that I've done in the past and paintings that I've done that use this technique. This is a really good way of doing it. It's quick as well, it's dead fast. So now I'm going to add another layer of mountains to this. I'm going to spray another layer of white. You'll see how that white separates the mountains that we've just done. And I'm going to add some clear coat to this just to make sure that the paint lifts off better. So there you go, magazine paper again. Get that head out of the way. Oh, remind me in my next video to remove my head from the video, because I'm sorry, that's really bad. But you get phone. But you get the idea. So I'm going to do some more mountains, same texture, same style of magazine paper. And just running your fingers over it and dragging it down. And you're smearing the paint and letting the texture. Sometimes I crinkle the paper a little bit. Sometimes you do it more than others, and that's what gives it that texture. So there you go, look, you've got a mountain range there, and you can see the kind of layer we've done in the background. And you can keep going with that. You can layer it and layer it and layer it until you're fed up. And now I'm just going to add a couple of wee lines for detail for this front layer using the palette knife. And that just shows you that these mountains are closer to you than the ones in the background. It just gives it that little bit more edge, that little bit more detail, and makes it look closer. One of my favourite ways, definitely one of the quickest ways, and one of the best ways to get texture. Okay, so method number 4, and I actually just thought about this as I was painting these. I was going to make that third method cover the whole bottom of the page, but I thought, no, let's show you another one. So this one, do exactly the same as we did in method number 2, which is paint the outline of whatever kind of mountain shapes that you want. So I'll just flick through this bit quickly because you've seen this already. Painting the outline, spraying it black, but this time instead of tearing off a piece of paper, just grab your palette knife. And you can use your palette knife to drag down from the mountain tops down to the bottom to scrape away some of the paint that's there. You have to do it when the paint's wet obviously, or you can spray some clear coat on top to make it wetter, but grab the palette knife and just drag it down. And I'm just lightly going over with the tip here, right? But as you're doing this, if you want to scrape away more, like I'm about to do here, just lean harder and use more of the edge of the palette knife, and look what it does. See that? It gives it a little bit of texture because the palette knife's not perfectly straight, so it leaves some of the black behind. And this way is really easy as well. The first bit maybe takes you a few minutes to paint the the outline of the mountains and to spray it in and stuff, but this bit here doesn't take long at all. And you can just go over it, and if you don't like it, spray black over it and do it again. It's dead easy. And with that, there you go, that's taken what, half the time that the first this layer at the top right took us. Doesn't give you the same texture though, it's just kind of plain white as it's going down. Doesn't give you the same break of the kind of snow or light effect that you might get of the second one, but there you go, it's a different style of painting it. So there we go, all 4 ways, totally different ways of doing it. All 4 look good in their own style of painting. I like using them all. I don't use the top left that much, I use the other 3 probably a lot more. We'll zoom in and have a look and see. That one you could use if it's a simple painting. If you want realistic texture, then that one's good. Space stuff, this one's pretty decent. And anything else you want to mix it up with, I'll just use the palette knife. That one's pretty good as well. So please hit the like button, don't forget to subscribe, comment below, like, comment, subscribe, all the rest of it. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video, hopefully not too long.